Is your prepper pantry a little too beige? If your prepper pantry is bland and colorless, it can be worse than boring. It could be downright dangerous. Hey, it's Jera with Wicked Prepared. Many prepper pantries are heavy on beans and rice and canned spam or canned chicken, and they're way too light on vital nutrition. And this can lead to some pretty serious problems by way of nutritional deficiencies when the time comes to eat the food that we've stored. And if you're not planning to eat this food that you're storing, then why are you doing it? Once you get the basics covered in your prepper pantry, it's time to evaluate for nutrition and start adding in what's missing. Today, I'm going to show you a few secrets to add in some nutritional insurance in a very easy way that you'll actually be able to use. This month, Thrivalist has some big food storage discounts in their sale bundle that includes freeze-dried sweet potatoes. And sweet potatoes are one of those nutritional powerhouses that should be a part of our diets, but are missing from a lot of prepper pantries. Sweet potatoes are a great source of complex carbs and fiber with a low glycemic index. They add vitamins C and A, as well as magnesium and all kinds of other nutrients to our diet. And they have antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer properties as well. And the freeze-drying process protects all those nutrients and locks them in with a 30-year shelf life. And that right there, that 30-year shelf life, is what makes this more than just an emergency plan for a lot of people. For a lot of people, this also becomes a retirement plan. If you play your cards right now, you can have the nutritious food thing taken care of, ready and waiting to take the strain off your golden years. So I told you that I'm stocking up with that discount sale bundle that includes the sweet potatoes. Well, it also includes freeze-dried green beans. And one way to ensure that your prepper pantry, really your pantry in general, is nutritionally sound is to make sure that you have a wide variety of colors. So here we're getting the orange and the green. And green beans are going to provide some of the nutrients that we're not getting in those sweet potatoes. But now I'm going to take this one step further because so many people store foods like this, but they really have no idea how to use them, what to do with them. So they just kind of sit in a closet and never get used. I'm going to show you how I use these foods to make meals in a jar, which are like your own homemade emergency meals. So when we're faced with an emergency, I'm not staring at these cans wondering what to do with them. I know what I'm doing. I'm grabbing a jar, I'm adding water, and boom, I've got a meal ready to go. The first jar meal that I'm showing you today is barbecue chicken sweet potato bowls that are packed full of nutritious ingredients. Let's get started. I'm going to show you how I do it. For this meal, I'm using a quart-size wide mouth mason jar, and of course, I've got my canning funnel to make it easier to get everything down into the jar. Now let's go ahead and get started. The first ingredient I'm going to start with here is going to be some freeze-dried diced chicken. I'm doing 2/3 of a cup of the diced chicken. Now, y'all, if you don't have a measuring cup set that has these odd sizes, like 2/3 of a cup, 3/4 of a cup, it is completely like amazing. I absolutely love it because I only have to scoop once to get this 2/3 of a cup. So I'll link to the set that I have down below because I absolutely love having those sort of different sizes that you don't get in every set. Next, I'm going to be using some freeze-dried diced sweet potato. Now, you do have to pay attention because you can get things like sweet potatoes and potatoes both dehydrated and freeze-dried, and there is a big difference in the way that they're going to work in the recipe. So they're not really interchangeable with the same amounts and the same measurements and water and all of that. So these are freeze-dried. Now, there's lots of different varieties of sweet potatoes. Lighter colored ones, darker, deeper colored ones. These are a little bit lighter colored ones, but they're really good. They've got all the same nutrition, all the same fiber, all that vitamin A, and all that good sweet flavor. And I'm going to be using 3/4 of a cup of the freeze-dried sweet potato. Next, I'm going to be using some instant beans, and you can use any instant bean that you have. They have to be instant beans because instant beans have already been cooked and then dehydrated, so they cook so much more quickly than your typical dry bean, which is really, really important in a jar meal. I'm using pinto beans today just because I have used black beans before, but you can see my canister is almost empty. So I figured instead of having to open a new black beans, I'll use a type of bean that I've got more of ready to go. So I've got a lot of these pinto beans, but any instant bean is going to work here as long as it's instant. And I'm going to be using a 1/2 cup of the instant beans. So there's a 1/2 cup of instant pinto beans going in. And next, I'm going to be using also some green beans. Now, you could definitely vary up the vegetables in this. I think the sweet potatoes are a pretty important one, but you could vary up all the other vegetables in it for sure. Like you could put in some zucchini or some cauliflower or anything like that, whatever you have, whatever you like, whatever kind of nutrition you're trying to add to your meals that day. I'm choosing the green beans today, partly because I wanted some green in this dish and partly because these are also on sale this month. So I know that I can restock pretty at a good price. So I'm adding some green beans. I've got 2/3 of a cup of green beans here. And now I'm going to go ahead and add my kind of sauce and seasoning ingredients. I don't want those at the bottom of the jar, but I also don't want them right up at the top. I'm going to have them kind of in the middle, and they're going to filter down and fill a lot of the spaces between some of these other ingredients. So I'm going to get started with our barbecue seasonings and sauce ingredients. And I am starting with some ketchup powder. And this is pretty awesome stuff. I love ketchup powder because I love things like, barbecue and things like that. And I love to be able to include this in my meals in a jar. I will put my source for this down below the video in the video description because this is kind of a more difficult item to find. I don't think I've ever seen it on Amazon. I've only ever really found it one place, and it is Firehouse Flavors, which is an absolutely just amazing resource. It's an amazing store. They have got so many products. I'm telling you, take a look around. You'll be mind blown. So if you are really into meals in a jar and things like that, seasonings and mixes, it's a great store to know. So I've got 1/3 of a cup here of the ketchup powder going in. I'm going to give this a little bit of a jiggle just to kind of get that to settle down and filter down so we can fit more in our jar. And next I'm going to be adding some brown sugar, but when it comes to meals in a jar, you want to make sure that you're using granulated brown sugar or pourable brown sugar. It's basically loose, dry brown sugar. It is brown sugar. It's just doesn't have that moisture that you would have in, a regular brown sugar. And 2 tablespoons is the same as 1/8 of a cup. So I like to use these little 1/8 of a cup scoops just so that I have to measure a little bit less. 1 scoop does it. So there we go. So if you have 1/8 of a cup measure, then go ahead and use that, or you can just do 2 tablespoons. And now I'm moving on to some Worcestershire sauce powder. Once again, I will put a link to the one that I use down below. I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of the Worcestershire sauce powder. The only thing with powders like these is you do want to make sure to keep them sealed up in a jar with a good tight seal like a mason jar. I have made the mistake before of storing them in other types of containers, other types of lids, and they can clump over time because they get moisture in them. So I've never had a problem storing them in jars like this. And the same goes for tomato powder. Never had a problem storing it in a mason jar, but other kinds of containers definitely have some problems. So I've got 1 teaspoon and 2 teaspoons. Tomato powder is an amazing ingredient to have in your pantry. You can do so much with it. It's just tomatoes, that's all it is, but it's really, really strong. So you do have to kind of tread lightly with it when you're first getting started. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of cornstarch. Once again, I'm doing 2 teaspoons of the cornstarch. And now I'm going to add a little bit of seasoning. So I'm going to be doing a teaspoon of this smoky pecan seasoning. The stuff is so good. My friend turned me on to this, and I now have several bottles of it because it's just a really delicious seasoning. So a teaspoon of that in there. That's going to give it that nice smoky kind of barbecue, flavor that's going to make it extra authentic. Settle all that down. And now I'm going to add 1 more final veggie. Or I guess it's actually a grain. So I'm adding some freeze-dried corn. And I'm doing 2/3 of a cup of the corn. This corn is so sweet and so good. It's non-GMO, which is really kind of remarkable in a corn product. And now I've got everything in here except for the rice. So I'm just going to kind of make sure that this is pressed down a little bit so I have enough space. And I'm going to use a fold top sandwich baggie to keep my rice separate. So with bowls, you usually typically have some rice and then you have your other ingredients over the rice. If we mixed it all together, it would just be kind of a barbecue chicken and rice. It really wouldn't be what I would consider a bowl. So I'm going to keep the rice separate. I've got a fold top sandwich baggie here. This is they're very inexpensive at the grocery store, and it's going to fit in the jar very, very well, very easily without having that sort of stiff zipper to have to work with. And it's also going to allow the oxygen absorber to interact with to protect the rice inside the baggie as well because it's not sealed airtight. So I'm just pressing that down in there and folding it over the top here. And I am using instant white rice here. And it's very important that it is instant rice. They make instant rice in white rice, brown rice, jasmine rice, probably more. So you can use your favorite kind of rice. But it has to be instant because once again, this is just regular rice that's been cooked and then it's been dehydrated. So it cooks very, very quickly. We really only even need to soak it in boiling water if that's, all we can do. And it has different, like I said, measurements, ratios with water and things like that. So you really can't substitute it for regular rice with the same measurements. So I'm using the instant white rice today, and I'm using 3/4 of a cup of this instant rice. So we've got the rice in there. Let me get this settled down. Now it's in the baggie, so we're not going to end up with a mess, but I'm going to take out my funnel and pull the baggie up, and then I can really kind of settle it down in there. This jar is very full, but we should have all the space we need. If not, I can tap it a little bit here to get things settled down, but this is going to be just perfect. I'm just going to add a little bit of seasoning into this rice. Now, I guess this is optional if you like your rice just plain. I feel with the bowls, I like to have a little bit of seasoning in the rice, just so that it's not just straight plain rice. But if that's not what you're accustomed to and you're watching your salt and your sodium or things like that, then you could leave the seasoning out. And for my rice, I'm just going to be adding a little bit of chicken bouillon. So I'm just doing a 1/2 teaspoon of the bouillon. And then I'm doing a little bit of salt. So I'm just going to be doing a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And of course, you can adjust this any way that you need. Now, with this baggie, I just kind of loosely twist it to close it. That's all. And that's going to allow, like I said, the oxygen absorber to still interact with any oxygen that's inside this baggie. So I'm going to go ahead and add my little oxygen absorber and get the lid on this jar. Just make sure the baggie doesn't kind of stick in between the rim of the jar and the seal of the lid, just because that could kind of disrupt the seal. So here is our meal in a jar all ready to go on the shelf. Of course, you want to make sure that you label this and have the recipe for cooking it up somewhere handy, not just on the computer in case you are in an emergency situation and you can't access that. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to remember how to cook this. Now, to fix up this meal, I'm going to use my butane stove because this is what I usually use if we need to fix up a meal when the power's out. This stove is actually dual fuel, so it runs on butane or propane. It has an adapter that you use for the propane. So if I needed to use it like outdoors in cold weather with a different fuel, I would have both options. I'm just going to go ahead and lock in the fuel, and we're ready to go. So of course with this meal, I'm going to start with the rice. That's why I put the rice up on the top of the jar. So I've got a small saucepan here. Now I'm just going to add 3/4 of a cup of water to my little saucepan. With instant rice, you're using the same amount of water as you are rice. So if you use a different amount of rice, then just adjust your water amount accordingly. I'm just going to bring this to a really quick boil, stir in the rice, let it simmer for just a minute or two, and then I'm going to remove it from the heat. And I'm going to let it set and finish while I do the rest of the dish. Now, like I mentioned, there's different ways you can do this with that instant rice. You could even just boil your water and pour it over the rice in some sort of a dish or a container. Let it sit covered until it absorbs all the water. If there's any leftover water, you can just drain it off. Or you can cook it in a pan. Just kind of depends on the situation. If you're in an emergency situation, what you have to boil water. Do you have a tea kettle? Do you have, an extra pot? Kind of what's going to work for you in that situation. Whatever way you do it, though, you're going to want to use a lid to conserve the heat or to hold the moisture in, the heat in, whether you're doing it in a pot on the stove like this or whether you're just pouring the boiling water over. You're going to want to cover the rice after that. All right, it's been just a minute here. This is just about to come to a boil. It's just simmering. So I'm going to go ahead and take my baggie of rice out of the jar, and I'm going to go ahead and just dump it in the rice and seasoning. Just going to give this a little stir, get this all stirred together. And I'm going to add the lid back on. I'm just going to let this simmer for about 2 minutes or so, and then I'm just going to remove it from the heat. Turn that down so it doesn't go too heavy. These little burners are actually surprisingly powerful. They're pretty inexpensive. They're small. They're easy to store. They're the best thing to have on hand for emergencies. All right, so it's been about 2 minutes. I'm going to go ahead, give that one more stir. I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to remove it from the heat and just set it aside while I finish with the rest of the dish. So to put together our barbecue chicken sweet potato part of our recipe, I'm just going to use this kind of medium-sized skillet. And I'm going to go ahead and empty the entire remaining contents of the jar into the skillet. You can see there's a little bit of powder left inside the jar, so when I add the water to my meal, I always use the water to rinse out the jar before I add it to the meal. I'm going to be adding 2 cups of cold water. I'm going to start by kind of mixing this all together, get everything moistened, get all of the sauce powders blended together, and then we'll put this on the heat. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add some heat onto the skillet. I just want to bring this up to a simmer, at which point I'll cover it and just simmer it for, it's probably only going to take about 5 minutes. All we're going to need is for the liquid to absorb into these ingredients and thicken up the sauce a little bit. And the longest item that's going to take is the chicken. It's just going to be long enough for the chicken to get fully tender, because everything else will be just literally moments and it would be ready. Freeze-dried foods are very, very quick to cook. And that's part of the beauty of these jar meals as well, is that they come together super quickly. They're not going to waste fuel. They're not going to waste time. That's why a lot of people like to use these just for everyday, busy day dinners. If they didn't make a plan for dinner, their plans fell through, or their crock pot wasn't plugged in, whatever the case may be, these make a really, really good quick meal to keep you out of the drive-thru. This would be so much better than a drive-thru meal, because you can see all of these different veggies. We've got all the different colors, all the different vitamins and minerals, fiber, all kinds of stuff going on in this meal. I will cover it just to let it come to a simmer a little more quickly. All right, this is just starting to simmer. I'm going to go ahead and turn this down, and I'm just going to let it simmer, covered, stirring occasionally for, like I said, probably no more than 5 to 10 minutes, and it'll be ready. All right, so this has been cooking for just 5 minutes, and it is nicely thickened up. I have got this turned on the lowest possible heat. I'm going to go ahead, the couple of things that you want to check. Number one, the chicken, like I mentioned, and just to make sure that the instant beans are all the way tender. Let's see, let's pick a big piece of chicken. That looks perfect. I'm going to turn off the heat and let this set for about 5 minutes. And I bet you that's going to be perfect. See you back here in just a minute. All right, so this has been setting for another 5 minutes or so. So let's just see if, I'm just going to give it a try and make sure that everything is fully tender. Couple beans, a good big piece of chicken. Use a little tasting spoon here. Whoops. That is tender. Now I've got to say, I thought I had turned this off when I walked away, but I actually had it on the the flame was barely flickering. So it was actually on, but I don't think it would have needed to be to get that everything tender. The big trick with, freeze-dried food and dehydrated foods and things like that, if it doesn't get tender enough, you may need a little more time or a little more water, basically, or sometimes a little more heat. So those 3 factors, you can always add a little more water, let it set a little bit longer. I know depending on, how the humidity is where you live, or your altitude above sea level, your elevation above sea level, sometimes people have different experiences, and sometimes people need to add a little extra time or a little extra water. It's just something to keep in mind. All right, so now let's get this served up into our bowl. All right, so I've got a bowl, and I've got my rice here that was keeping warm over there. Now I've got it kind of divided out into 3 portions just so I can evenly divide it. You usually get 3 to 4 servings from a typical jar meal like this that's in a quart jar. That's going to depend, obviously, on the appetites of the people you're feeding and what other things you're serving alongside. But I thought that this would be a good 3-serving meal. Of course, you could always have extra rice if you wanted to stretch it further. You could even add just a little more veggie into your big jar and then put your rice into a smaller jar separately. So you'd have, room to have a little bit more rice and stretch this meal further. So now, of course, I would want to divide this chicken and veggie and sweet potato mixture up into about 3. And there we go. This looks delish, and I am ready to dig in. Let's see, let's get a little bit of everything with a little bit of rice. So good. Here's a little cubes of sweet potato. So tasty and so healthy. We've got this full of a whole variety of different veggies, different colors, lots of different nutrients. We've got fiber from the veggies, from the beans. We've got protein with the chicken and the beans. The beans and the rice here is making a complete protein. We've been focusing a lot more on, just the health of our bodies and what we've been putting into our bodies. And so this kind of meal is really a perfect thing to have in the repertoire. And of course, if you wanted to, you could swap out, like I said, the white rice for brown rice. You could use quinoa or bulgur wheat if you wanted something a little bit different. You could skip the rice altogether. You could use like a swerve brown sugar substitute if you wanted to cut the sugar down a little bit in this. Lots of different things you could do. Another thing I would do with this is I would actually put some rice and then some of this mixture into a tortilla if I had them, wrap it up and make a little kind of barbecue chicken sweet potato burrito. And if I had some coleslaw, I would even throw that in. That would stretch this meal even further. We do that a lot when we have leftover rice and meat dishes, kind of wrap it up in tortillas and make it into little burritos and stretch it even further. These bowls are so adaptable. If you're vegetarian, you can replace the chicken with some freeze-dried cauliflower or TVP. Change up the vegetables or even change the meat to whatever you like, whatever you have on hand. You want more or less sweetness or saltiness? Just adjust the seasonings or do a different flavor profile altogether. Swap the barbecue for Southwest or any other seasoning. Swap out the base of your bowl, like I mentioned. There's lots of possibilities here. The discount bundle that's on sale this month is called Spuds and Greens, and besides the sweet potatoes and the green beans, it also includes mashed potato flakes and dehydrated potato dices. And they've also got some really, really great discounts on a couple of other items as well, which is freeze-dried sweet corn and their instant milk powder. And that really got my wheels turning because milk and potatoes is a really special combination. Now hear me out here. I hear from a lot of people who struggle with preparedness, either because of a lack of money or because of a lack of storage space, or sometimes both. So I always used to wonder, what was the bare minimum that someone could actually survive on food-wise? Like, was there one food that a person could realistically survive on? And there isn't really one perfect food that fits the bill, but there are two foods that together can work pretty well to keep people alive, and that is milk and potatoes. And this whole concept is based on white potatoes, but it could be either sweet or white or both. So milk and potatoes is a magical combo when it comes to survival. So I was really happy for this chance to stock up on both of these items at a discount. Now the milk and the sweet corn aren't on sale all month. It's just the first part of the month. It's a special America 250 sale they're having. Actually, the day this video comes out is going to be the last day of the sale. So if that's something that you want to take advantage of, you're going to have to move quickly. I will tell you a little bit later on how you can stay up on those things so that you don't miss out if you're watching this video later on down the road. But this got my wheels turning. Milk and potatoes can make a very simple but surprisingly delicious soup. I have at least 3 or 4 versions of the soup on the channel, and the basic recipe is just a packet of instant mashed potatoes, a can of evaporated milk, and a quart of broth. And then you can add in different things like ham or bacon, diced potatoes, any number of things, but it really makes quite the good soup. So I decided, since I'm stocking up on these things on sale, I'm going to do a meal in a jar version of this soup, add some corn to make it sort of a corn chowder. And to make it a little bit different, I'm going to add in the sweet potatoes and some Southwest seasoning for a Southwest corn and sweet potato chowder. The white mashed potatoes are great at thickening soups like this. So this soup is going to have both. It's going to have white and sweet potatoes going on. They're both very nutritious despite the white potatoes bad rap that it's gotten over the years. And of course, the soup also has the milk. So it's got that perfect survival food combo in there. So I'm also calling this survival soup. I don't usually do a lot of soups in the summer because for me personally, I think of soup as a fall and winter kind of thing. But I have heard from so many people out there who say that they enjoy soup all year long. So let me know down below how you feel about that. But Even if you're strictly a winter soup kind of person like me, now is still a great time to make up some jars to enjoy in the fall and winter, especially if you get sick and you don't feel like cooking, but you still need something to nourish you. Or if the power goes out in the dead of winter and it's getting cold in the house, can you imagine how nice it would be to pull out a jar and have a nice steaming hot homemade bowl of soup? Let's get started. I'm going to show you how to do this survival soup. And for this recipe, I'm also using my wide mouth quart mason jar and my canning funnel. Now the first ingredient I want to add to my jar is going to be some diced sweet potatoes. This is going to be corn and sweet potato chowder. And I'm going to use 1 cup of the sweet potato dices. These are the freeze-dried sweet potato dices. So 1 cup of the sweet potatoes. And next I'm going to add my mashed potato flakes. Now these are just plain mashed potato flakes. They are just the potatoes, nothing else in them besides potato. So I'm doing 1 cup of the mashed potato flakes. And next I'm adding my freeze-dried sweet corn. 1 cup of the freeze-dried sweet corn. Next thing going in is going to be some instant milk powder. I'm adding 3/4 of a cup of the instant milk powder. Get that shaken down in the little crevices. Next I'm going to use some heavy cream powder. I'm doing 2 tablespoons of the heavy cream powder, same as 1/8 of a cup. I'm going to be also adding 2 tablespoons of butter powder. So there's my 2 tablespoons of butter powder. I'm adding chicken bouillon. I'm doing 1.5 tablespoons of the chicken bouillon. I'm just going to use my 1/2 tablespoon and just scoop it 3 times. And then the final ingredient is going to be some Southwest seasoning. And I am adding 1 tablespoon of the Southwest seasoning. So I'm going to use 2 of my 1/2 tablespoons. All right, so now the jar is ready to seal up and get on the shelf. I'm going to go ahead and add an oxygen absorber. 200 cc's is usually good for this size of jar. And I'm going to get this labeled and ready for the shelf. All right, here it is, all ready to go on the shelf. But you know I'm not going to put this on the shelf today. I'm going to put it in a pot. I'm going to cook it up, and I'm going to show you how it comes out. So I've got my soup pot. I'm going to go ahead and just empty my jar of soup into my pot. And I'm going to be adding 6 cups of cold water. And remember, you do actually have graduated measurements on these mason jars. So if you are stuck in a situation where you don't have something to measure with, you can just use your jar. And of course, keep in mind with the soup, you know, if you want it thinner, you can always add more water. And if you wanted it thicker, you can always add less water. It's very flexible. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give this a mix. Get everything blended in. Now, any like dairy clumps that you have in here are probably from the heavy cream powder because that milk really doesn't clump. It mixes up really beautifully. And any heavy cream or butter powder lumps will melt out as this heats. So I'm not going to worry too much about, you know, getting it perfect. I'm just going to get it basically moist and then get this on the heat. Once again, I've got this pretty high. I'm going to bring it up to a simmer and then I will turn it down low, throw a cover on it and let it simmer just for a few minutes. It just needs to thicken with the mashed potato flakes, and you know, the veggies are going to be tender in no time at all. That'll just be almost instantaneous. So it's not going to take long at all to get this ready. I am going to throw a lid on it just to conserve more of the heat. All right, this is just starting to simmer, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it down and put the lid on it. It's only going to have to simmer for probably like 5 minutes, but after it's done simmering, I am going to let it set for a few minutes after that, because what you'll notice with soups with freeze-dried ingredients, like the corn and the sweet potato, is those ingredients will tend to float for a little while. Even after they've kind of come back to life and gotten all rehydrated, they'll still float for a little bit. So usually a little bit of setting time at the end of a recipe, just 10 minutes or so, helps everything kind of just sort of homogenize and come together nicely. So I'm going to let this simmer for 5 minutes, and then we will let it set just for a few additional minutes for it to be ready to eat. All right, so this has been simmering now for 5 minutes, and it's actually looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and let this set for just about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to let this cool off, number one, which is going to be important. And like I said, it's going to all kind of homogenize, thicken up a little bit because this is a creamy chowder. And then it'll be ready to taste test. Too much steam for you to see, but everything has come together. It's not floating anymore. It's nice and thick. Let's go ahead and serve up a bowl. We've got our chunks of sweet potato and corn and our creamy broth. Let's give this a try. It smells amazing. This is such a delicious Southwest seasoning. Very, very tasty. This is really, really delicious for such a simple, hearty soup. It's not spicy from that Southwest seasoning. Maybe the teeniest little touch. It just gives it a lot of good flavor. And the sweet potatoes are a delicious touch in here. The broth is just nicely flavored. It's a very simple, but very delicious and very nutritious soup. That chowder came out so tasty. That Southwest seasoning is perfect in there. Meals in a jar are a great way to have meals that are ready to go in an emergency. Meals where you control the ingredients, you control the nutrition, and you know everything that's in there. They're a great way to turn those cans of random ingredients into meals that you'll actually use. I do always recommend trying out any new recipe once. Make up the jar, cook it up, prepare it, try it, have your family try it. We all have different tastes. You're not always going to like the same thing that my family likes, and vice versa. You want to make sure that you and your family are going to like this meal before you make it up in bulk and store it on your shelf. This way, you can also make any adjustments that you want or need to make, and you can get it just perfect for your family. And then make up a bunch. I've got a whole collection of meal in a jar recipes, everything from breakfast to dinners to desserts. So you can have a complete and varied pantry that could carry you through many, many months or even years. If you seal these jars properly and you store them in a dark area, they can last 5 to 10 years on your shelf at least. But most people do grab them off the shelf occasionally for just quick, easy meals or for camping trips and things like that, and that helps keep them rotated. They're also great for gift giving and things like that. If you want to take advantage of the Thrivalist sales and discounts that's going on right now, whether it's to get ingredients for meals in a jar or just to bulk up your long-term food storage, I'm going to have the links you need down below and on the screen as well. Make sure you look for my name at the top of your screen so that you know you're in the right place. And please know how much I appreciate your support of both myself and the channel. You can always get the best discounts by using the subscribe and save service on Thrivalist. It really is just a tool. You don't have to order more than once. You can always pause it or cancel it after your order processes, but it does give you an extra 10% off of your entire order, which really does help out a lot. If you happen to be watching this video on down the road and you've missed that sale, then don't worry, because you can always find out what's on sale, what current coupon codes there are by going to tryfreezedried.com. That's got a lot of our favorite sources, special coupon codes that we have available for our viewers, any sales that are going on at the time. You know, everything that you need to find that. You can even sign up for alerts when you're on that page so that you will get an alert on your browser if there's a new sale or a new coupon code that pops up. And the other thing you can do, which a lot of people take advantage of because this is the best way to make sure that you don't miss anything, is to sign up for my text alert service, because I'll send a text right to your phone whenever there's a new coupon code or a really good sale that comes out. So if you want to get on that, you can text alert to my number that I'm going to put on the screen for you. I'll have it down below the video as well. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on anything, you know, you might get a few more texts a month than the typical list, but you know, most people don't mind that. So if that includes you, then text insider to my number as well, and you can get on my insiders list. Let me know down in the comments, what are your favorite ways to add nutrients and nutrition to your prepper pantry, or if that's something that you still need to work on. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a sweet potato emoji down in the comments, and check out this video next for some more meal in a jar ideas to expand your repertoire. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.